Good afternoon, and welcome to the Rotary Club of Madison, where we have opportunities to share and learn while making valuable connections to people in our community we might not otherwise have a chance to meet. It's a little different during the pandemic, but we look forward to those valuable connections later this year when we can be together again. I'm past President Jason, and thanks for joining us today. Now you may ask, what the heck is Jason doing up at the podium again? So here's what's going on. Because of the snow, President George's flight back home was postponed. Our president-elect, Mark Moody, is in a warmer climate, as is immediate past president, Andrea. So club leadership then asked the next past president prior to Andrea, and that's how I arrived at the podium today. Let's open our meeting with some music. Casey Okers will play This Land Is Your Land. We continue our monthly series where a newer member of our club interviews a longer-term member. This helps us not only connect with our newer member, but also hear a little more about one of our long-term members. This month, Cheryl Whitkey interviewed longtime Rotarian and past president Dick Olson. But first, a little bit about Cheryl. Cheryl joined our club in 2013, and she is the executive director for Safe Communities, a Madison organization dedicated to saving lives, preventing injuries, and creating safer communities for all. She is a member of both Safe Communities America and the Unity Point Health Meriter Board of Directors. In Rotary, Cheryl co-chairs our Scholar Mentor Committee and serves on our club's board of directors. Here's Cheryl's summary of her interview with past president Dick Olson.
Hello, fellow Rotarians. Did you hear the one about Dick Olson? You know, Dick Olson. He was the club president back in '79, longtime Rotarian. Well, he won a prestigious award. They found him outstanding in his field. So I'm here today to celebrate Dick Olson. My name's Cheryl Whitkey. I'm delighted to tell you a little bit about Dick. I had a chance to talk to him a couple weeks ago, and here's what I learned. First of all, he doesn't give advice, so you have to just sort of watch and learn from his actions and the warmth that he brings to his life and to the people in it. He grew up on a farm in Edgerton, one of 4 boys, Norwegian stock, went on to travel to Sweden actually as a foreign exchange student through Rotary before there was even a Rotary Youth Exchange. And then went off to the Korean War where he fixed big, huge, fancy radar equipment to help with that effort. Came home, went to law school, joined Rotary, and has been working with us to keep the bylaws polished ever since then. I think something I learned when I listened to his stories that really impressed me was the depth of his friendships. And one thing that really touched me was him telling me about how his friends back when he was a young man thought that the women he was hanging out with weren't really suited for him. So they set up a blind date, and they knew him well enough to pick the right woman. They dated for basically a few months, got married, and have lived happily ever after. He and Marcia have 4 boys. There's some symmetry there, having grown up in a family of 4 boys himself. He worked as a attorney, particularly in utilities. And another thing I can tell you is that my husband was on the other side of the table with him when my husband was the head of the Citizens Utility Board, and he said he was always just professional, delightful, fun, even when you were on the other side of him. And that just says a lot, doesn't it, in these days? That we know someone in our midst can just always be gracious, kind, even in the most sort of conflicted and contentious times. So I was just really delighted to meet Dick. I hope that sometime soon we can sit down and have lunch all together. I'm sorry you couldn't be there with us. And I learned a lot too about his love of books and reading and his deep friendships with those that he reads books with and with the books in his life. So again, I want to celebrate Dick and thank him for his service to Rotary, and just let you know how lucky we are to have him on our club as a leader. We stand on his shoulders. So thanks.
Our club's Rotary Information Committee provides occasional reports on the history of Rotary. Today, past President Rob Stroud is going to tell us about the organizational and structure of Rotary. Rob?
Thank you, Jason. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Rotary beyond our club. For most Rotarians, Rotary begins and ends at the club. For those of you in our club, if this is the limit of your Rotary experience, then consider yourself fortunate to be in such a remarkable club. While we're one of 35,000 clubs in over 200 countries, we're among the 10 largest clubs in Rotary. We have as many members in our club as 13 average-sized clubs. There's no city as small as Madison with a club this large, and we're not alone. There's also Madison East, South, West, Madison Westtown Middleton, Madison Horizons, Madison Breakfast, and Madison After Hours. Our club and about 60 other clubs in the southwest third of Wisconsin make up District 6250. And along with 15 other districts, we're part of Rotary Zone 29. There are 34 zones who elect 17 directors, each of whom serves for a term of 2 years. So our zone gets to elect a Rotary International director once every 4 years. 3 past members of our club, Herb Walsh, Joe Jackson, and Joe Werner, have all been members of the Rotary International Board. And one of our zone's most recent directors, Jennifer Jones of Windsor, Canada, is about to become Rotary's first woman president. There are a number of ways that members in our club have ventured beyond the boundaries of our club and into the wider Rotary world. Here are some examples of things that I've tried. Before taking office, our club presidents attend president-elect training, where they join presidents-elect from over 300 other clubs from 7 other districts to learn how to lead and inspire their members. A number of our members have participated in Rotary friendship exchanges, traveling to another country and then hosting Rotarians from the district they visited. Members of our club have been active in several Rotary International fellowships, such as curling, skiing, and scuba diving. We have members who have participated in Rotary polio immunization, and others who have visited and assisted with international service projects sponsored by our club. We have members who have hosted Rotary Youth Exchange students and have sent their own sons and daughters to other countries as Rotary Exchange students. Our club members have been active on district and zone committees. We've had 15 members serve as district governor, with Michelle McGrath soon to be number 16. If I include every member who has attended a district event or an international convention or has made up at another Rotary club, maybe it isn't most Rotarians whose Rotary experience is limited to our own club. If you haven't ventured into Rotary beyond our club, here's my message. While our club offers a wealth of opportunities to be active Rotarians, to participate in our many committees, fellowships, and service projects, once we reopen, there is another world of Rotary opportunities beyond our club that I would encourage you to explore. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Alex Vitale, chair of our UW Rotaract Advisory Committee, announces upcoming UW Rotaract Club Zoom meetings for the spring semester. The meetings all are at 7 p.m. and feature Rotarians sharing their stories and experiences with the UW students. The meetings will include at least 30 minutes or so for participants to move into virtual breakout rooms to further discuss the topic of the night. Rotarians are encouraged to attend these Zoom meetings with our Rotaract students. And you can see the dates here on the slide, and they will also be listed in Friday's newsletter. So on to birthdays. We have birthdays to celebrate with a bit of wisdom or humor that complements Rotary's mission. We also encourage members to make an age-appropriate gift to the Madison Rotary Foundation, rounded up to 100, to benefit our club's Synergy Scholarship Fund. So, on January 24th, Mary Helen Becker, who shares a quote from Voltaire, "Those who make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities." On January 24th, Tom Walker. Past President Angela and Jeff Bartell have birthdays this week, and they share, "Greetings to our Rotary friends in Madison. We are safe and secluded here at home in the Arizona foothills in Tucson, where the weather permits daily exercise and activities. Probably the most exciting thing to happen to us this last week was making appointments to receive our first doses of the Moderna vaccine. A great birthday present for both of us." Indeed. January 25th, Kendall Cobb. January 26th, Cheryl Cato, who shares a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. "In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. This is a time for vigorous and positive action." January 26th, Joe McNeil. January 26th, Chris Rich. Also on January 26th, Trey Sprinkman. January 27th is a special day for 3 Rotarians: Jim Hamray, past President Susan Schmitz, and Rick Kiley. So they have a joint message. Ever since Rick Kiley joined Rotary in 2009, the 3 of us have enjoyed our birthdays together. And one of the reasons is that we share it with Mozart. Here are some interesting areas and facts and similarities about the 4 of us. Jim, Susan, and Rick always know how old one another is because we are 5 years apart. Jim is 77, Susan is 27, and Rick is 67. And remember, Mozart died at age 35. Jim joined Rotary in 1982, Susan in 1989, and Rick in 2009, which is a total of 81 years. And if Rotary existed in the 18th century, Mozart would have joined because we sing, and he would have been the chair of our music committee. Think how wonderful this would have been. The one thing that we are not so sure about in terms of Mozart is if he would have been as proud to be Rotarians as Jim, Susan, and Rick are. Happy birthday, Mozart. On January 28th, Roberta Gassman shares this message. As we also celebrated the birth of one of my heroes, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. this month, I think of his words, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." I appreciate that another one of my heroes, President Barack Obama, who I had the honor of working for in Washington, added, It doesn't bend on its own. It bends because we bend it, because we put our hand on that arc and we move it in the direction of justice and freedom and equity and kindness and just generosity. It doesn't happen on its own. With new leaders in Washington, in the midst of a challenging but promising times, may we Rotarians all keep bending the arc together. Thank you, Roberta. On January 28th, Rich Lynch says, "A healthy democracy requires a decent society. It requires that we are honorable, generous, tolerant, and respectful." Great message, Rich. On January 30th, Chuck Elliott, who says, "Remember that you can reset your New Year's resolutions on January 14th, which is the Orthodox New Year, and February 12th, the Chinese New Year. However, after that, you're really on your own." So thanks to our celebrants for their contributions to the Madison Rotary Foundation. Please join me in wishing them a happy birthday. Our birthday celebrants, Jeff and Angela Bartel, will now lead us in singing Happy Birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Rotarians. Happy birthday to you.
Before we move on to our next agenda item, I wanted to let members know that former member and past president of our club, Peter Eichmann, passed away on January 7th in Green Valley, Arizona, at the age of 95. We extend our sympathies to Peter's family. Since past president Rob Stroud is with us today, he's going to come back up to the podium to highlight our members in the news. Rob?
Thanks again. I have the pleasure today to feature Charles Tubbs. Charles joined our Rotary Club in 2013, and he has served on our club board and currently on our foundation board of trustees. He has also served as our youth protection officer and on our youth exchange program. Charles has had a long career in law enforcement, which spans 46 years. Hard to tell from looking at him that he must have started in high school. He served as Wisconsin State Capitol Chief of Police, including during the time of massive protests in the Capitol building, and he was praised for his respectful communication, which helped maintain a peaceful atmosphere during that difficult time period. Charles is currently Director of Dane County Emergency Management, so we know he's been incredibly busy over the past year. He appeared on Channel 3 News last week as being among those in police and fire personnel to receive a COVID vaccine. Our fellow Rotarian, Moses Altsek, wants to show his appreciation to Charles for the many long hours of service that he has and continues to devote to our community, especially during the pandemic. To honor Charles, Moses made a $1,000 gift to the Rotary International Foundation to name Charles as a Paul Harris Fellow. One becomes a Paul Harris Fellow when an individual contributes $1,000 or when $1,000 is contributed in one's name to the Rotary International Foundation. I'm pleased to be helping Moses recognize Charles with this honor. Since we won't be doing this in person, we are mailing the pin and the Paul Harris certificate to Charles. Our thanks to Moses for his generous gift, and congratulations to Charles Tubbs on becoming a Paul Harris Fellow. Also, some other members in the news. Jeannie Cullen Schultz and her husband Christopher welcome twin boy and girl on January 17th. Joe Linus was interviewed on Channel 15 News about Wisconsin Chamber Orchestra teaming with Eat Street to raise money for its Musician Relief Fund to support lost wages from canceled performances. Renee Moe was quoted in an article in the Capital Times about United Way partnering with 5 local nonprofit organizations to seek mentors to help youth take a new path in life. Lynn Sexton and Michelle Orga appeared on Channel 27 News about A. Grace's $51,000 donation to Second Harvest Food Bank. Christian Overland and Fred Mose were quoted in an article in the State Journal about the shift in the preferred site for the redevelopment of the Wisconsin Historical Society Museum. Jason Ilstrup was interviewed on this week's episode of Center Stage with Milfred and Hans podcast, talking about how to improve the heart of the city. And finally, Stu Levitan was featured in the editor's note and wrote an article, It Took a Neighborhood, in this month's Madison magazine. And that's it for our members in the news. Jason?
Thank you, Rob. Our speaker today is Brad Binkowski, who co-founded Urban Land Interests in 1974. Brad has undertaken complex real estate developments that have revitalized downtown Madison, making it into the vibrant district it is today. His pioneering development projects have ranged from the renovation of Fire Station Number 2 in 1980 to the award-winning Block 89 development. Urban Land Interest has taken on the redevelopment of the last large, underutilized site on the Capitol Square, assembling the properties surrounding the historic American Exchange Bank building, which took a 23-year focused effort, and he is going to tell us more about this project today. Brad, we look forward to your presentation, and we have made a contribution to the Rotary International Polio Plus Fund as a way of saying thanks for speaking to us today. I also wanted to mention that we will have a live Q&A with Brad immediately following today's presentation, and you will find the link to the Zoom Q&A in this morning's email from the Rotary office or in the YouTube chat today. Let's welcome Brad to our virtual podium.
Good afternoon. My name is Brad Binkowski. I'm a partner with Urban Land Interests. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to appear before Downtown Rotary to talk about issues, problems, challenges, and opportunities that downtown Madison faces. I know it's a subject that's near and dear to my heart, and it's something that the members of Downtown Rotary are passionate about and are really in kind of a unique position to try and make a difference in. You know, when we look at the last year, 2020, the advent of COVID, the social protests and the damage that we recorded on State Street, we've gone through one of the most tumultuous years that any of us have ever imagined, well beyond our comprehension. You know, we're at a point where downtown Madison today is very similar to what existed in downtown Madison in the 1980s. There's very little traffic on the sidewalks. Restaurants are shuttered. In the 1980s, they didn't exist. People are staying away from work. Parking ramps are empty. You know, the social fabric of our community has really kind of been torn apart by both the protests that turned violent and by people's efforts to stay home and avoid each other to protect themselves against COVID. You know, in these times, it's really important that we remember what downtown was and that we really anticipate what it can be again, and that we really understand the steps that are necessary to make it something better. I'm going to give a little brief summary of the history of Block 89 to illustrate, I think, a couple of points that I'm going to make. One is, it's really important for people to invest in projects and in efforts that can make a long-term difference. Without that commitment to the future and without that investment, things are not going to change. Things are not going to just automatically come back to normal. In 1980s, downtown Madison was deserted because all of the retail tenants and shops had moved out to malls on the east and west side of town. There weren't any new office buildings. The last big office building in downtown Madison was U.S. Bank Plaza, First Wisconsin Plaza at the time, that was built in 1973. property was available for development, and it was relatively inexpensive. So we took an option to buy some property in Block 89, the old abandoned JCPenney department store, from Northwestern Mutual, and we developed a concept to convert it into a large floor plate office building. At the same time, Manchester's Place was being developed and pursued by Fred Mose and Nate Brand and John Peterson. People looked at those two projects, which were the first new office buildings in 15 years in downtown Madison, and laughed and said, "You guys are going to go broke." In fact, we didn't. 18 months after each of the projects were complete, they were full and they were very successful. In the case of Block 89, the renovation of the Pennies building became the first phase of what was growing into a full-scale block development. We had moved our offices into a little tiny historic building, the American Exchange Bank, where we had 3,000 square feet on the third floor. We decided that that building was an important part of Madison's history that needed to be saved. It had been vacant for some 6 years, I think, before we bought it from Valley Bank. And, we moved in, converted it into a really nice small office building. And from that building, we planned the expansion and the development of Block 89. We slowly acquired some property. We went to the city, Madison, with a concept. And that concept basically said, we want to make an investment in a project that will stand the test of time, where we can put parking underground. At the time that we bought the site, as you can see from the slides that I'm going to show you, there was vacant surface parking and buildings that were abandoned on the site. Putting parking underground basically was a really critical step, we thought, so that we could reactivate the sidewalks and bring restaurants and retail shops back. And above that retail level, we could develop mixed floor plate office space that could appeal to a wide variety of different users. We went to the city of Madison. We needed a partnership because we couldn't afford to develop very expensive underground parking ourselves. Made a presentation to them about the concept of the project and about the financing structure. George Austin, who was the director of planning and development at the time, said, "You know what? This is great urban planning, and our support of underground parking is really critical to implement that plan." Paul Soglin, George Austin, Paul Riley, other leaders said, "Yep, we can do this," and they did. And we started on the construction of the parking, and what you see, on the next 3 slides is a comparison of what existed before we started, and what the end result of our effort was. Block 89 became, an example of what we could do in downtown Madison and what others could do in downtown Madison. We ended up with a project that has 560,000 square feet of office space that was basically full of a variety of law firms, lobbyists, others who wanted to be downtown. We had 6 or 7 different restaurants all above an expensive underground parking ramp. Block 89 was and still is the single block of property that has the highest assessed value of any block in the city of Madison. So it's generating lots of tax revenue for the city to go out and do other things with. When we looked at the opportunity that surrounded the American Exchange Bank, as we were sitting in it, we saw a block that was abandoned buildings or underutilized buildings. It was, full of surface parking. Over 23 years of time, we assembled the block of the American Exchange properties bit by bit until we ended up with a site that has almost 57,000 square feet, as you can see on the next slide. Wasn't an easy task. Again, 23 years wasn't a short time frame, but we believed that the same development outcome that we demonstrated that we could do at Block 89 was appropriate for the American Exchange Bank. We planned what we could do. We knew that the American Exchange property that we assembled was one of only 2 sites left in downtown Madison where you could do a large underground parking ramp. And we knew that parking was critically important to implement, a development project involving office space. People talk about how transportation is going to change and how electric cars and autonomous cars are going to really fundamentally change the face of how people get to downtown, and how improved mass transit, BRT, can make a difference. And the reality is, we need everything that can go well to move people in and out of a downtown area. And we're hopeful that will come about. But the reality is that unless you have parking, you can't sign leases. And whether you're negotiating an office lease in the suburbs on the far west side, the east side, or in downtown Madison, office tenants have a minimum number of parking stalls that they demand. And in fact, you can never supply enough parking to meet their needs. And so in any development, you're going to have a limited number of stalls. Most people will be coming to work by bus, by walking from their adjacent apartments, or by riding a bicycle. And that's a really good thing. We need a multimodal transportation system, but maximizing the amount of underground parking that we can supply is part of the solution. And by using underground parking to stimulate tax base, we can enable the city to recover from the economic calamity that COVID has imposed. And we can provide new revenues that they can use to go out and advance other important initiatives. Let me give you an example. When we developed recently the Anchor Bank properties, we provided a 543-car underground parking ramp. We got cooperation from the city to let us build underneath Carroll Street and into a little bit of the right-of-way on Doty Street. We basically created and redeveloped the Anchor office building, did an expansion, created a 200,000 square foot building. One of the reasons we did it was because the property was so derelict that it was almost becoming unoccupiable, and we thought it needed to be reinvested in to become an asset. We thought we needed to reactivate and revitalize the southwestern quadrant of the Capitol Square. But we also did it because we had a really important tenant that we wanted to continue to maintain a relationship with. And the story I'm going to tell you about Zendesk, feeds into what we think the future of downtown Madison is. And it also is part of the reason that we're advancing the American Exchange development in the middle of this pandemic. Prior to the pandemic, downtown Madison was booming. Restaurants were successful. People were coming downtown for all kinds of special events. Art fair on the square, farmers market, Taste of Madison, or just to hang out with their friends and have dinner. That environment, was something that's pretty unique, and that doesn't exist in a lot of other places, both across the country and certainly in the city. And that environment is really created a place that people want to be. Madison's blessed by having an extraordinary pool of talent, of labor talent. According to a study that CBRE does annually of the top 50 tech markets, Madison has the highest percentage of educated millennials of any of those 50 markets. I think it's 28.7%. That's an incredible draw to tenants or office users that are coming to Madison, and they're coming because of the labor pool. And that labor pool, by the way, wants to be downtown, or wanted to be downtown prior to COVID, because of the quality of life that was available down here, because of the fact that they could walk a block to restaurants and hang out with friends and see people and have energy and be across from the beautiful Capitol Square. It was a really important competitive differential. We had a small company about 8 years ago hire 4 people. The company was from San Francisco. They hired them out of the computer science department at UW. And the people that were hired said, we love the coming to work for the company, but we don't want to go to San Francisco. So the company leased some small office space, I think 2,000 feet in downtown Madison, in the basement of Center 7 on Pinckney Street. The owner of the company, a gentleman from Denmark named Mikkel Savan, came to Madison to meet these guys as he was going around the country to look at where he could establish another office outside of San Francisco. And was so smitten and so taken by the quality of life in downtown that he said, why would I look further? Let's do our office here. The company was Zendesk. Their growth has been extraordinary. They grew from 2,000 feet to fill the entire lower level of Center 7. They moved into U.S. Bank. They expanded 3 times. They occupied 27,000 feet. And they grew into a company that became the prime tenant in our development of the Anchor Bank properties, ultimately leasing 105,000 square feet. Prior to the pandemic, they planned to have 800 people, in the office space that they occupied at Anchor. An extremely high density, and the build out of their space has been absolutely wonderful. It's extraordinary. When the Mariner staff got a tour a year ago, I think they were really impressed. And Zendesk has been a very proactive partner with the city, with the downtown, and with non-governmental organizations that they want to support. The COVID changed their plans. They aren't in the building now. They're working remotely. They're hoping they can come back sometime in the middle of 2021, but that's still not sure. And they may, sublease some of the space that they leased because they don't think that they will come back in the same density. But they grew from 2,000 feet to 100,000 feet plus or minus in a very short period of time because of the quality of life in downtown and because they could find office space that was available to meet their needs. Without office space in downtown, they would have been, someplace else. And we were delighted to be able to give them an accommodation that they were excited about and that they really liked. Zendesk has 300 parking stalls available in the 543-car ramp that we built. If they, at full employment, what they expected pre-COVID, 800, it means 500 people would be coming to work using bus, using their feet to walk or riding a bike. That's an example of how parking, which Zendesk required, enabled a lease that drove a building that drove significant tax revenue for the city of Madison, that improved the quality of the square, and that hopefully became an example that we can use to reach out to other tech companies. In downtown Madison, there are other examples of technology growth. Google leased a small 7,000 square foot space in one of the buildings on East Washington Avenue. They've now grown to 49,000 square feet, increasing sevenfold. Sony moved into the renovated U.S. Bank Plaza building. Educational Analytics, Propeller Health. I can keep on going down the list. Technology firms like architects who rely on talented workers are moving into the downtown. Today, downtown Madison last year gained 1.77 new technology employees for every one that left. According to the newsletter that was published recently, that's the highest level of tech in-migration any place in the U.S. It exceeds the ratios in Austin, and all of the other cities that you read about in national press that are bigger than Madison. We're getting more net technology in migration because people identify Madison as a user comfortable, friendly, place that they want to put down roots. That trend is going to continue and is going to grow once we're through COVID. And that's why we're advancing the American Exchange Bank property today. As you look at the slides for American Exchange, you can see that the vast majority, more than half, 53% of the site that we control and grew to control over 23 years is used for surface parking or an abandoned bank drive-up. The buildings are vacant or functionally obsolete. In over 700 lineal feet of sidewalk frontage, there are 0 retail stores. All of the space is used for office space, and it's not very attractive, and it's hard to keep filled. Our proposal for the American Exchange property is to do the largest possible underground parking ramp we can, a total of 805 stalls, and to design the ramp so that we can reactivate the sidewalks surrounding the bank and create 22,000 square feet of new space that can attract new restaurants and new shops that'll activate the sidewalk and be a place for people to be in to hang out. And above that retail level, we want to do 300,000 square feet of office space that's focused on technology users. Office space that has a whole series of landscape roof terraces that you can see in the attached plans, that has a glassy building, but office space that sits above, a ground floor level that is designed to recapture the traditional scale of retailing in downtown, that saves and incorporates the historic bank building into the fabric of the development, that treats the expanse of Pinckney Street as a series of smaller retail expressions that reflect what the square was. We aren't proposing a monolithic building like US Bank that actually, tries to compete with the Capitol. We've gotten a really positive response from the city. We've received all of our major public approvals over really, kind of one significant opponent. The people from Eno Vino and the AC Hotel really opposed our project because it was taking away their view. Nobody's entitled to a view, and in the end, the city, agreed. We believe that having 2,000 people housed in the American Exchange project will drive demand for restaurants and retail shops in the downtown that will actually make Eno Vino stronger and better. And that's why we're advancing this development through the approvals in the midst of a pandemic, because building for the future is critical to solving some of the problems that we face today. It helped pave the way to make the square what it was in the 70s and 80s, before COVID. A commitment to the future and investing in the future will help the square recapture the vitality, the energy, and the quality of life that it once had. But beyond private development, and by the way, we're not sure we can do this project until COVID is in the rearview mirror. We don't think that until people are willing to commit to lease office space that it's going to be feasible. But you have to have space ready to go to be able to satisfy a tenant's timetable, and that's our goal. So in 2022, hopefully, we're going to start this project. And the project, when it's done, will increase dramatically the tax revenues, generated by the city by some 13, 14, 15 times. That's important because, those revenues are going to help the city advance other initiatives that they think are important. We're going to make the downtown better. But in addition to any private development, what we really desperately need today is a vision of what downtown can and should be. The vision of State Street being a series of boarded-up buildings without any retail viability isn't very appealing. It's time to talk about getting the buses off of State Street. It's time to talk about turning State Street into a pedestrian mall that can really attract people, that, where there's outdoor seating next to the restaurants. The city's experiment with streetability was a great success. Streetability needs to be made permanent, through not only on State Street but throughout the downtown, where you can have more outdoor seating in good weather and set it up so that people can congregate outdoors. We don't need a few angled parking stalls that they aren't enough to make a difference in the downtown, but great outdoor spaces, in the public right-of-way, like you see in Boulder, Colorado, and lots of other cities, is part of what I think the future of downtown requires if we're going to be really successful. Getting buses off of State Street is something we've talked about for a long time. It's more critical today than ever. There can be a solution to BRT that doesn't involve running buses up and down State Street. I think there are a number of projects that potentially could be combined into a mega TID district that generates up to $60 or $80 million of revenue that the city could use to implement a newly imagined new downtown with a better vision. We are selling our fire station block, and we've entered into a contract because we believe that the development of air rights is really important there, and we can't do that project at the same time we're doing American Exchange. The Core Properties has got that under contract. Combining what's going to likely go on the fire station block with the stalled Drury Hotel on the MATC site with the American Exchange block into a big TID district that could generate revenue that the city could use to, redo State Street, to create a new vision, is really important, and I think is something that we ought to talk about and we ought to advocate for. But the vision's not going to come from the public sector. The vision's going to require the private sector, people that are willing to invest, people that want to make a difference, coming together and jointly, trying to define what we want downtown Madison to be, and then working towards that. Rotary has a really important role because you have all been committed to the future of Madison for a very long time. You are a force, and we need to have your force, your vision, and your efforts really focused on trying to make the downtown of our capital city as good as it can be. I look forward to working with all of you, with the city, to implement and to create a bigger dialogue about just exactly what our city is, and then figure out how to get it there. Thank you very much for the time that you've given me. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Brad, thank you for that presentation. For those that are interested, we will now move to the live Q&A session via Zoom, and Neil Fauerbach, chair of our program committee, will serve as moderator. You can see the link in the chat or in the morning email from the Rotary office. I also wanted to remind members that we seek feedback on our programs each week, and there's a link in the chat to a brief survey about today's program. We will also include that link in our Friday morning email. So thank you for everyone who attended today, and we are adjourned.